Great. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the League of Women Voters of California's webinar on SB 9, the California Home Act implementation. My name is Sharon Stone. I am the Membership and Technology Manager.
Hi, and I am Amaris LeBron. I am the Civic Tech and Project Specialist.
Great. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A section at any time, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. Now let's hear from our incredible speakers. I'd like to first introduce Mohammed Alameldin. He's a policy associate with the Terner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley. He brings the center's research to inform housing policy at the local, state, and federal levels. Welcome, Mohammed.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I'm not sure if Mohammed's going to share his slides. Or if Ryan will, but yeah, you guys can definitely get started.
Okay. Did either Ryan? Oh, okay.
Or are you guys going to, is this going to be like a tag team thing? Should I introduce Ryan as well now? I'm just going to introduce Ryan as well.
Yeah, we're gonna ping pong, yeah.
Okay, that's not a problem. I'd also like to introduce Ryan Joy, who's a policy associate with California YIMBY. Prior to joining California YIMBY, Ryan worked to protect and reform our democratic process at the California FPPC and Fair Vote. So welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. We're here to do a quick analysis and also just really lay out the framework of how implementation of Senate Bill 9, otherwise known as the Home Act, is going in the state of California. I know some people are very new to the housing space, but right now, Ryan and I will be going through this PowerPoint to explain to you what Senate Bill 9's intent was, what does it do, what is its impact, and what are some possible reforms that the bill could have to really lead to its purpose. So yeah, very nice to meet everyone here. And I will begin with Ryan. He will start with the first slide.
Sure. So before I lay out what the intent of SB 9 is, I think it's best to start with an acknowledgement of why a bill like this came to be introduced in the legislature, and that is really that California is in a housing crisis. We currently have a shortage of homes, around 2.5 million homes in our state. And to put that into context, on an average year, we usually build around 100,000 units of housing. And that has led to a severe crisis. 2 in 5 households are rent burdened. A disproportionate number of those households are communities of color. The dream of home ownership continues to be unattainable for low and middle income families. And our reliance on single family homes, which has been the predominant type of home created in the past few decades, not only continues to price people out of the market because single family homes are generally more expensive, but it also leads to urban sprawl, which increases car dependency and exacerbates our state's climate crisis. So, the housing crisis is a crisis that touches all other crises. And especially in a state like California, where we have, we're incredibly diverse and are the 5th or 6th largest economy in the nation. It is our mission to try to address this severe housing crisis, and that was the intent of SB 9. In 2020, Pro Tem Atkins, the leader of the state Senate, came to us and a number of other housing advocates and asked, what is a simple, straightforward solution that will affect the housing crisis statewide, not just in California's major cities. And one of the key things that we've been pushing on the past few years has been this idea of missing middle. And the missing middle is generally thought of as between like 2 and 10 units. This is the type of housing that we built a lot of before World War II and stopped for a number of intentional policy choices. The Terner Center, just to put a plug in, has a great paper on this. But this missing middle housing is traditionally affordable. It's usually smaller, and it's usually the pathway to affordable home ownership and naturally occurring rental housing. And that was the intent of SB 9. The intent of SB 9 was to legalize duplexes statewide, not just in transit priority areas, not just in high resource areas, but in every neighborhood across California. So SB 9 was passed in 2021. It went into effect this year, January 1st. And there are two aspects of SB 9, and this gets a little technical, so feel free to throw your questions into the Q&A. The first aspect was it allows a duplex on every lot zoned for single family homes in California. It has some exclusions. It says you can't do this anywhere that's a high fire risk area, anywhere that's potentially environmentally damaging, like wetlands or sensitive environmental areas. And on top of that, you can also split your lot. So you can build a duplex on one lot, and then you can split the other lot and build another duplex. So it effectively allows for 4 homes wherever one currently stands. And it's not just like, free reign. You can't just do that wherever you want, however you want. It sets some minimum standards. And I think that's what Mohammed just transferred to here on this slide. There's a set of minimum standards that cities have to adopt. So you have to say that, the lot has to be split 50-50 or 60-40. The unit has to be at least 800 square feet. There's the local government has discretion to say how big the unit can be. There can be no short-term rentals. So you can't rent any of these units out on Airbnb. And on top of that, if you're going to do a lot split, the owner of the property has to sign an agreement, an affidavit that says they won't move in the next 3 years. And the intent of that was to try to prevent some investors from buying up single family homes and making them into duplexes and splitting the lot. Additionally, there's some standards around setbacks. You have to have a 4-foot setback in the rear and the sides to make sure you're not, peeping on your neighbors, looking into their window. And then with parking, it sets some standards around parking, and likewise with affordability. But there is a lot of local discretion here. So although these are minimum standards, cities, like as we will hear with Mohammed, have actually imposed a lot more standards than just this basic set of rules. And that has led to a pretty lackluster adoption. I'll let Mohammed go into this, but we really have not seen SB 9 take effect in the way that we had hoped it would in the last year. But with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Mohammed, who has done a lot of really great research on this and can go into more detail.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Ryan. And also, it's really important to note that when it came to Senate Bill 9, that these units will be ministerially approved. So it doesn't go through the community input process, the multiple meetings, all this sort. It's just like it goes through the local government, they approve the project, and it should be an easier method for permitting new units, right? So the point of Senate Bill 9 was to basically unlock a lot of the land are in single family areas to allow for these missing middle archetypes. We already did this previously with accessory dwelling units, and this is an expansion for there to be 4 units on what was previously a single family lot. And it was also important right here in this to note that local ordinances may not physically preclude a duplex, but a lot of localities have actually made it economically feasible to build these units. Which first we did this analysis at the Terner Center when the bill was going through the legislature, and that we found that SB 9 could enable 700,000 new homes. And that's only about 1% of single family parcels. A lot of parcels were ineligible because they were too small, or just financially wouldn't make sense. And then it went to market feasibility, which is even though 700,000 homes could be built, we were expecting around 480,000 homes in the next 10 years, because not everyone that's eligible to do an SB9 lot split would do one. Who wants to live next to construction for like a year, right? So there was an expectation that about 100,000 homeowners would utilize this bill across the state. But there's a limited impact due to this, how much discretion was given to the local level. So common areas where we've seen discretion. So I went ahead and analyzed around 12 cities across California. There are over 500 jurisdictions in California that could adopt SB9 in different ways. It's no two ordinances are alike. It is a laboratory across the state. Someone that's doing an SB9 unit in Berkeley can't call someone in Oakland, even though those cities touch. Same could be said maybe in the Sacramento area to Davis, or Walnut Creek to Danville, these sort of things. So it's really sparses out the ability to build. Second, localities have done two things. So they either bolster the effectiveness of SB9 or they limit its impact. Most localities that chose to adopt the local ordinance, so a locality could just adopt state standards, but if they chose to adopt local ordinance, a lot of them chose to hinder its effectiveness. And they would do things like include height limits of 14 to 16 feet. Minimum unit sizes became the maximum unit sizes of 800 square feet. Design requirements on the architectural layout of the building. That makes it much more costly. So first, that makes it difficult for a lot of these projects to pencil. Second, there's these affordability requirements, which we don't have anything against affordability, but if you were to task an affordability requirement, deed restricted affordable housing 55 years, there's usually a public subsidy to make that feasible. These localities had this expectation without any public subsidy. So it was basically a way to ensure, oh, we're advocating for affordable housing, but we're going to make sure none of it gets built because we're not going to invest into affordable housing. Third is use of land. Localities would do things like a big courtyard has to be between the two units. So then suddenly most of the parcels that were eligible for SB9 weren't eligible anymore because people don't have an acre of land that they could build on. Or they would mandate basically excessive easement, which is very technical. Or they would ban flag lots, which is basically, you have this driveway that connects two units, just ban that, a lot of parcels become infeasible. So financially and geometrically, we made it impossible for a lot of these localities, chose to make it impossible to adopt SB9. And we've seen across the board this unequal application of standards that that don't apply to single family homes. So if you were to build a single family home on a lot, you wouldn't have to deal with these standards, or ADUs, accessory dwelling units that were recently legalized. And the cost to build an ADU, according to the Terner Center, costs $150,000. Everything is streamlined. Your permits are done in 60 days. A lot of homeowners would rather opt to build two ADUs than rather choose an SB9 development. Oh, and here were the examples. I apologize. But to go over it again, the 800 square feet maximum of the 800 square feet minimum, that only allows a 1-bedroom, maybe a 2-bedroom. It makes a very expensive structure. It bans families from moving into the SB9 unit. It does a lot of things to make sure that people don't want to build. Because the point of this is to empower homeowners to basically split their lot and maybe have their family live in the backyard, or they rent the back unit. Giving access to good schools and things to family members or to renters was basically the objective here, right? But if you have an 800 square foot maximum with a low height limit, which is like a 1-story, 1-bedroom, it won't financially pencil, and not a lot of people would want to live there if they have a family, right? There were landscape requirements where you have to have a 5-gallon hedge that circled all around the SB9 unit to make sure in one locality, to make sure no one could see it. So they didn't have this requirement for ADUs or single family homes. Some of these already covered. There was even one locality that had that required LEED Platinum certification. which this certification is used for stadiums. But they said for it to be environmentally friendly that they would like LEED Platinum certification for the new SB9 unit that isn't entailed for multifamily structures in the area, single family structures, or accessory dwelling units. So the Terner Center right now, we're conducting research on how many SB9 units were built across the state. This will be published sometime next month. Until then, we have these recommendations from what we've seen so far for people at the local level. The HCD, the housing, wow, I've said this acronym so many times, it means Housing Community Development, has a technical assistance guide. And the Association of Area Governments has SB9 templates that localities could use. At the state and regional level, we're giving the best tips, the best practices to local level to adopt, which is something that you could advocate for your local communities. Access to eligible parcel information, easy to read checklists, and clear information on project timelines. If I'm going to spend money to invest into a lot split for my home that I live in, I want to know when this will be completed. I want to know what's necessary. I don't want to be hit with a random fee. And this is what's really impacting why people aren't adopting this law or using this to build more housing. Peer-approved design. An architect is expensive. If the city wants architectural standards, what specifically could be made? Same-day permitting approvals, and incubating small builders, small nonprofits, community developers. These sorts of small housing structures are a great way to bring more people in the community, start building housing within that community. So it's not someone from out of state. So really to utilize this opportunity. And if you want affordable housing, there's this great model in the city of Pasadena where it gives a simple interest 1% loan for people to build affordable housing. And to look at best examples at the local level when implementing an ordinance for Senate Bill 9 is really just best practices to ensure that these housing units could be built, because we all need to solve the housing crisis together. And I'll pass it to Ryan for how he will look towards what can be done at the state level and look towards the future.
Sure. And this is my role here. I'm a state policy advocate for California YIMBY. So, I work in the state capitol, and there's a lot of talk about trying to fix SB9 this year. We're not sure whether it's actually going to happen this year or next year, but as Mohammed outlined, there's a lot of ways in which we could fix this bill. And there's a lot of really key learnings outlined here on some best practices that we can adopt from local governments. And one of the key things here is, as Mohammed mentioned, ADUs have been extremely successful in California. ADUs are oftentimes more feasible for homeowners to build if they want to add a unit of housing. Homeowners are much more likely to use ADU law instead of SB9. And that is because there's a lot more clarity and certainty with ADU law. It took a number of years. It took about 3 years between 2018 and 2021. We passed a number of bills that continue to clarify what cities can and can't do as it relates to ADUs. And that has led to a really fertile, development pipeline for ADUs. Cities have seen a huge uptick in ADU permits since 2018. And that's because homeowners can have certainty that if I give my city this single permit or single application for an ADU, they will get back to me within 60 days. And if I tick all of these boxes, they are going to approve my application. And a lot of homeowners just don't have that certainty with SB9. So trying to adopt some of those best practices from ADU law to SB9 is going to be crucial. That includes limiting the amount of discretion cities really have in lot size requirements and some of the other tricky math that they've been able to use to subvert SB9. And then additionally, empowering a state agency like HCD or the Attorney General to enforce the spirit of the law. And this is something we run into a lot in housing policy. We pass all of these really big, ambitious policies, and it's up to the Attorney General and the state agencies to actually interpret and enforce those laws. And if we don't give the state agencies enough power or give them enough motivation to enforce the laws, then it simply won't be done. There's a famous example of the city of Woodside, which is a Bay Area city, very expensive, probably one of the highest cost zip codes in the nation. They tried to get around SB9 by declaring their town as a mountain lion sanctuary. Because in SB9, if you have an endangered species that you're trying to protect, you don't need to apply the law. And luckily, the Attorney General saw through that, and the Attorney General laid down the law and said, no, there's little recordings of you in city council hearings saying that you're using this to get around SB9, and that is, against state housing law. So trying to incorporate the departments in enforcing the law is going to be super important. So we don't have to keep playing whack-a-mole on each jurisdiction. There's a great saying from one of my colleagues that there are as many ways of subverting SB9 as there are exclusionary jurisdictions in California. As Mohammed said, every single exclusionary jurisdiction seems to have some way of getting around it. And we want to give a state agency the power to actually go in and enforce the spirit of the law. Additionally, increasing financing options. It's very expensive to utilize SB9. There aren't a lot of loan products that currently exist. Realistically, the most realistic option is a construction loan. And that is a high cost loan, and it's going to be out of reach for a lot of homeowners who want to utilize SB9 and can actually really benefit from it. One of the reasons why you passed this bill was to try to give elderly individuals who are aging in place a pathway to pull some equity out of their property and downsize. If you split your lot and you carve out half your home, you're downsizing, you're pulling some equity back. Additionally, it's one of the main drivers behind this policy was also to create more opportunities for wealth building for existing low-income homeowners. However, like I said, these loan products are too expensive and it's too difficult to get financing for these projects. So opening up more SB9 opportunities to low-income Californians and elderly Californians through targeted financial programs is going to be super important for implementation. Similar kind of tone from the other from earlier. ADUs have been super successful. One of the ways that they've been successful is pre-approved building designs. In San Jose, basically you can buy a design from the city, and the city says, this meets all of our design criteria. You can just go ahead and submit the application and we'll approve it. That would be super helpful for SB9. And then trying to incubate small targeted developers who are focused on this type of product. And this is, again, one of the reasons why ADUs are so successful is there is a industry of ADU companies that are focused on developing at pretty low cost ADU solutions. There's one of the biggest companies is United Dwelling in LA, and they can apply, permit, and build your ADU in a year. And that's incredible. And it's a pretty low cost alternative to housing. It costs around, I think, somewhere just north of $100,000 for them to build a unit. They use manufactured housing offsite. So, there's a lot of ingenuity that we can unlock here by tapping the nonprofit and for-profit industry. And we have to make some policy changes to actually open up those opportunities for these individuals, because realistically, this law is very complex for a homeowner to actually use. You have to be a realtor or someone who really has a advanced level of knowledge when it comes to permitting and all of these development standards to utilize this. So making it so there is some sort of advocate, some sort of consultant, people who are focused on SB9 and can help your project get across the finish line, that's going to be important for implementation. Do we have another slide, Mohammed? I'm not sure if this is the end yeah. It would be great to open up for Q&A. I know we just covered a bunch of wonky policy details, but yeah, I'll turn it back to you guys.
Okay. I will open it up for Q&A. I know we had already answered a couple of really quick questions earlier. So I'm not sure if this is a question. Sorry, I'm looking at the Q&A window to see if either Ryan or Mohammed wants to comment on this.
Yeah, is this the question from Linda?
Yes.
Yeah, and this is actually a really interesting question, because this is something that some opponents of SB9 and some of our other upzoning efforts have tried to further, that increasing the amount of zone capacity on a property is going to increase the property value, and the research that's been done on this shows that this actually does not happen. And the reason that is generally with a policy like SB9 is because it's so widespread. If we were to go in and target, let's say, 1,000 parcels across California and say, you can build, whatever you want, 1,000 units of housing on these, 1,000 parcels, that would dramatically increase the property value likely. But because we're spreading this out across all single family lots in California, we have not seen any dramatic increase, any increase at all, frankly, in property values. And the same thing happened with ADUs. When we allowed ADUs on every single family lot and multifamily lot in California, the property values didn't go up. It's because the benefit was so widespread that the market didn't actually respond to that sort of amenity. So great question. Happy to follow up with the research on that. Mohammed, I'm not sure if you know the author off the top of your head, but yeah, there's been some interesting research on that topic.
Yeah, definitely. You answered it pretty well. So if whole areas are zoned at a higher capacity, it's very different than if only 20% of the land is zoned at a higher capacity. That's what, so like when we change what happens with the zoning, it needs to be throughout like most of the area. And so my previous experience was with the Green Lining Institute. I'm actually on the board of directors now for that organization, which is a civil rights, racial justice organization. And whose primary goal is to increase homeownership and housing supply through an equitable way. And when it comes to racial justice or helping lower income communities, we really have to look at what single family zoning. 80% of the urban land is zoned for single family homes. A lot of properties are grandfathered in. And these properties are the most unaffordable for entry level homeownership by far and large. And to expand on that, right now at the Terner Center, we crunched the data, and right now, California's path is that we're either building single family homes or we are building 50 plus rental. And in the next 20 years, that's only going to get worse, because if we don't have anything in the middle, which SB9 is a very small iteration of that, but all the things in the middle, if we only have rentals for high costs or single family homes that you have to buy through an inheritance, in 20 years, economic segregation is going to get a lot worse. So this is the first iteration to a lot that's going to be introduced in California when it comes to unlocking the 80% of land that's only meant for single family homes and allowing that for more entry level home ownership opportunities. Yeah, that's why I have that. And Sharon, would you like to moderate and just pick which questions that we talk about?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is a quick one, but Nancy was asking about the parking allotment, and is that realistic?
Yeah. So I can handle that one. So right now with accessory dwelling units, you're not required to have a parking spot. We haven't seen the end of times when it comes to traffic. And this adopts a lot of similar language that we've seen with ADUs and with AB 2097, which will be implemented later this year, which is parking in transit priority areas leads to people taking transit. At the same time, it leads these communities that are lower vehicle miles traveled, which means so 40% of greenhouse gas emissions that are happening in California are due to car usage. It's due to transportation going from job to home and back, right? More than 50% of trips are within 3 miles, which is very like bikeable or walkable. And if we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, it's not just electric vehicles. That's just exporting a lot of what's going on to other countries and having them emit the greenhouse gas for it. So when it comes to land use, we need this policy that enables for more transportation options, more mobility options. And thus far, we haven't seen a negative impact. The data hasn't pointed to a negative impact. Our live data sources of what's going on. Yeah, so that's my answer. Ryan, was there anything like that?
No, I think that was great. I mean, I would just double down that like we're trying to build an infill area so people can live closer to amenities and hopefully take less car trips. As I said earlier, the housing crisis butts up against the climate crisis, and land use policy is climate policy. So we definitely want to try to reduce the amount of car usage. And one parking space generally we've seen it be pretty effective for or sufficient for new development.
Okay, great. Thank you. Marian asks, how are you working with counties that have jurisdiction over unincorporated lots? Is that any different than working with a municipality, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So right now, SB 9 only applies to areas that are qualified for as urban areas, which is generally excludes a lot of unincorporated county-run areas. However, counties still do have their ability to implement SB 9 if they have some urbanized cluster. So, we haven't been working directly with cities. I'm not sure if I've heard of any bad actor counties, but overall, SB 9 predominantly affects the cities of California.
And anonymous attendee says that UBI and GBI are the only panacea to these problems. So universal basic income, guaranteed basic income. I used to work for Mayor Tubbs in Stockton and helped launch the first guaranteed income pilot in the country. This isn't the only solution. Guaranteed income doesn't help with high health costs, high housing costs, etc. But thank you for your feedback.
Okay. Linda has a comment about the Santa Barbara area and how SB 9 in that area is not helpful when viewed through a DEI lens. Do either of you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'm reading through her question here. I mean, one of the issues, so I think one of the issues that she's flagging here is close to zero vacancy rate in Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is obviously a very desirable place to live. And from my understanding, they haven't notably increased their housing production in the past few decades, especially as their university has expanded. So it makes sense that their vacancy rate is pretty low. It's a high cost, really attractive real estate market. And building more housing is the solution to this. The research has shown, and this has been confirmed by the Terner Center and researchers across the country, that a crucial element to solving jurisdictions' high cost issues is just building more housing. And building both affordable housing and market rate housing is an important part of that. So yes, nonprofit developers need to have more opportunities to develop in areas like Santa Barbara. But on top of that, market rate developers should be able to build in these denser infill areas where there's existing jobs, existing transit, like Isla Vista. And I would say to the compromise that that Linda mentioned. I think it would be very difficult to force someone to give away part of their property. Part of SB9 is to try to give these homeowners, some sort of wealth building tool, and say that, okay, if you split your property, you have to live on one of the lots for 3 years, which takes out the Wall Street investors from actually being able to utilize that provision. You can take and, basically you can get rent from the other part of the parcel. I don't think anyone would utilize SB9 if they had to simply give away the other lot to a nonprofit.
Yeah. And if I could add to this a little bit, so like if we were to have a scenario where SB9 were to do a split and it has to sell to a nonprofit developer or housing authority. So when it comes to a nonprofit developer, there's a lot of issues when it comes to community-based organizations and nonprofit developers in a lot of areas in California. A lot of them do not have those services like they do in richer coastal cities, right? So that would leave behind a lot of areas in the Inland Empire, the Central Valley, Northern California. And at the same time, the way that affordable housing works is that it can't be a 1 or 2 unit structure, right? This is the most complicated part of the tax code, especially LIHTC. So for that to happen, first of all, there would need to be Article 34 repeal for a city to even for cities to take on this issue if there's no nonprofit developers available, or if the housing authority would like to take on this issue. There are issues within the California state constitution. Number 2, there's where will the subsidies come from? How can they ensure that, what's the system to ensure that these units stay deed restricted? What would they work for? There's like a lot of things that are happening when it comes to this proposal that like other like nonprofit builders are looking at other ways to do like the same issue, especially when it comes to first-time home ownership for people making under 100% AMI, especially in Oakland, where they're saying can nonprofit builders convert vacant lots, about 10,000 of them in Oakland, and allow them for first-time home ownership opportunities, or to use Black and brown developers for them to do their first projects on like SB9 units. And those programs are being distributed across in localities that they choose to. So the city of Santa Barbara can extend upon those kind of practices within the locality, which could be done. San Diego is looking at practices similar to this.
And I do just want to answer Leona's question too. Leona brought up RENA and said, given there's a state mandate for jurisdictions to construct housing, what do you think the motivation to create barriers to SB9 is? The state mandate for housing production, it's called RENA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. Basically, every 8 years, the state comes in and says, your jurisdiction is going to grow by X number of people. So you have to plan for where X number of people are going to live and what sort of services you're going to be able to provide them. The city is required to submit a plan to the state. The state has to approve that plan. But after that, the city is not under any obligation to actually approve that housing. There's no teeth in RENA that says if at the end of those 8 years, the state, the jurisdiction approves exactly 0 units of housing, they don't face any consequence. There's been some ongoing litigation with how much cities actually have to follow RENA and like how realistic they have to be in their plans. But overall, there's no real mandate for cities to actually approve housing. They can set really crazy arbitrary rules and approval processes around housing. And that's why we are in this crisis, essentially, is because housing just isn't being built because cities have all of these crazy approval processes and requirements on development. So with SB9, this is just kind of part of that story. They take this state law, which is intended for, to produce housing, and they find ways to subvert it. So without real, consequences for cities for not following state law and actually building these units and improving them, they're just going to continue playing their old game.
Great. Let's, Jan has a question about how Prop 13 valuations may be impacted.
Yeah, that's a good one. So Prop 13, always fun. Prop 19 was passed in 2020 that allowed for property tax transfers. That system is that if someone of age of 55, severely disabled, homes destroyed by wildfire disaster, could transfer their primary residence property tax value to replacement residence. So that could be a way that older homeowners can basically move and still have the same property taxes that they did under Prop 13. Other than that, I know Prop 13 is a very tricky issue, and I'm wondering if Ryan has more insights on that since he worked more on the advocacy side. We didn't really research the topic.
I believe this would constitute a reassessment under Prop 13. So if you do go in and either refinance your home to take advantage of SB 9 with some of that equity or take out a construction loan, there's a chance that this would trigger Prop 13. I'm not a tax expert, but that's my understanding of how it would interact. So yeah, potentially if you're a fixed income and you have a Prop 13 property, your property taxes are capped, that would probably take those units out of the actual ball game.
Great, thank you for addressing that. If anybody else has any other questions, we still have a few minutes. I've got a question as a resident of California who has attended this fascinating webinar. What can I do? Like other than, making sure my representatives are a champion of this, like what else? What can I do?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely encourage everyone who finds these policies interesting and motivating to sign up for our newsletter. And you can even sign up to be a volunteer activist for California YIMBY. We're definitely not done solving the housing crisis. Obviously, there's still a lot of work to be done. So happy to put in a couple links in the chat. And feel free, I'll put my email too if you want to reach out to me with any questions or concerns. Yeah, it's definitely just like some of the core work of the League of Women Voters. It just takes a lot of power and time and activists. We need as many people as possible to tell their legislator that this is an issue and this is how we should solve it. And I would also, to put a plug to Mohammed, also inform yourself on, how we can solve this issue and its real root causes. The Terner Center puts out some great research, so.
That's great. Okay, I've got another question from Linda about, she wants a few more details about loan programs for ADUs. Is this money coming from the state? Is this a mix of funds from state, local, federal money? Do you have additional resources for that?
Yeah, definitely. So here's Pasadena's program. You could search on the website and they have a lot more information. I was looking at this, I'll be honest, like back in February, March, and I am exhausted from looking at housing stuff all day. And I don't remember everything. So here you go. I sent it to you as a typed answer to your question.
Okay, great. And then just a follow-up Prop 13 question from Jan. Is only the new property affected? So like would the split that is not occupied by the original owner
Yeah.
would only be affected?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So like since it's a lot split, which is a big advantage for SB 9 for the ADU laws, is that since it's a split, your residence is still there. If you move into the new building, if you're like under 55 or whatever from Prop 19, that new unit's property taxes, they have the Prop 13 cap, but starting from today. So the effect of it is if you want to still live within your structure, you have to live in one of the 2 units for 3 years, or one of the 4 units if it's 2 duplexes. If you live in a single family home, you want to build a duplex, you could do that. That's how I'm sure of it. I am also not a tax attorney. I am a researcher. So I would definitely, if Ryan doesn't have any more insight on this, I would talk to someone at like Holland and Lee or something.
Yeah, I don't have any specific details on how Prop 13 might interact with these units, but yeah, I would definitely, if you're considering doing it, I would definitely reach out to a tax attorney. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just to reiterate, we are recording this. This webinar will be, the recording will be sent to all of the registered participants. And I believe we'll also send the PowerPoint slides that you guys have put together, because I think those have a lot of really helpful links to resources. So we will make sure to include that too. I think those are all the questions we have. I really want to thank you both for joining us. Thank you for taking, time out of your day to participate in this. It's been really enlightening. It's been really great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah. Thank you all for attending.
Sorry, I just got a thing from Leona who says, tell me more about the YIMBY. I think you can go on YIMBY's website to learn more about it, and we will definitely give you all of those links to where you can learn about YIMBY.
And also, will the transcript be available anywhere, or on YouTube? Will it just have closed captioning? I believe someone's asking.
Amaris, do you know
accessibility need? Yeah.
Do you know
The
the answer to that?
captioning will be available on the YouTube video, but as long as Zoom is making the transcript file available for us to download, we should be able to put that in, I'm assuming, an email that it's going to go out to all attendees.
Great. Okay, again, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everybody has a good evening.